Hey guys, Luther here from Luther's Woodworking. We are on part 10 of making this large wooden toy train. Today we're going to be making the hopper car. Normally I would tell you to build your wheelbase first, and then we would normally add everything on top of the car. In this particular car, I want you to hold off on building the wheelbase. We're going to build this the hopper part first, and then we'll build the wheelbase. And I'll explain why a little later on in the video, but we need to build this hopper first before we do the wheelbase. The hopper itself, it's 1/2 inch material on the side pieces right here, 1/4 inch material Baltic birch on the slopes, and it's got 1/8 inch on each end to cover the end piece right here. So we're going to do that first. Now, to start out building this, I have some 1/2 inch lumber planed down, and it's 3.5 inches wide. 3.5 inches wide, and it's 7 3/4 inches long. Them are the two pieces. You need 2 of them pieces to start out with. That's going to be your 2 sides, but we have to measure it out and get it to the shape we want it. So what you're going to do is take one piece right here, and we're going to, get my ruler right here. What you're going to do is take your one piece, you're going to come down from the top corner up here, you're going to come down 5/8 of an inch from the top corner. Just measure down 5/8 of an inch and make a line. Make a little mark. Right here. 5/8 from the corner down here, make a little mark. And then you're going to take your triangle, square, or whatever they call this thing here. I should know, but I don't. And you're going to make a 45-degree angle right on that line. Right on that mark. Right down to the bottom of your board. Just like this. So you come down 5/8 of an inch and then go 45-degree angle right there. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to measure down 5/8 of an inch. And you're going to come down here and you're going to draw a line right at your mark, right down to the bottom. So now you have the shape of the side of your car right here. Now we just need to go on the chop saw, and we're going to cut on this line right here, and we're going to cut on this line right here, and this is scrap right here. We're just going to cut our set your chop saw at 45 degrees, and you're going to cut right on that line right here and make 2 of them. Now what I like to do is, I got this drawn out on one piece right here. I like to actually take these 2 pieces, we'll put them together, because I like to cut the 2 pieces at the same time. That way everything is exactly the same size. So what I just take some painter's tape here. And what I'll do is just put these 2 pieces together. And I just kind of tape them together so it helps me hold it when I'm on the chop saw. I usually tape it in a couple places. That way when I go to put this on the chop saw, it's not going to slide, and it's going to help me hold this while I cut these 2 angles. So I'm going to go and cut these 2 angles, and then we'll be back. Alright, so what I did was just go and cut these 2 angles on this piece. Now we can take the tape off. Tape really helps hold things together when you're cutting it. Now you know you got everything exactly the same size, these two sides for the hopper. Next we're going to cut the slopes. The slopes are made out of 1/4 inch Baltic birch. They're just they're going to kind of go up there like this here. And what you have to do is measure the distance from here. Let me get it. You got to measure the distance from here to the bottom right here, and that is going to be the length of your piece that you're going to cut. I got just a little under 4 1/4, but you can cut it just a little long. You want to cut it just a little longer. It doesn't matter if it's a little long sticking out of the bottom right here. We're going to sand it, but you want to try to get it somewhat as close as possible to the length. So we're going to head over to the table saw because I'll show you how to cut these slope parts. Alright guys, on these slopes, because all the angles on these cars, 45-degree angles, the first thing you're going to need is some 1/4 inch Baltic birch. I got mine 3 inches wide. That's the width of your base. So you need to cut some strips of that. And then the first thing we're going to do is I got my blade set at 45 degrees angle. First thing you're going to want to do is just run a board across and cut a 45-degree angle on one end of your board. And then, like I said, you need to measure across this here from this point to this point and kind of see what it is. Mine's a little bit under 4 inches. So what you need to do is measure over from this point on your board. I'd maybe go about 4 1/8 inches or something like that. And keep your blade on this side of the board. But like I said, the first thing you got to do is cut a 45 on here, and then take it and flip your board upside down. Now run it through and cut your other 45-degree angle on this side. Now you're going to have to kind of work your way up to that measurement. You want to get it as close as possible. I do have this already preset right here. I have a stop right here on my fence where I ran this through 45. I can flip this like this here. I can take this up to my stop right here, and I should be able to run this across, and it should be the right size. You're going to have to work at getting that the right size so you don't have too much to sand once you all glue it together. So I got it blade set at 45. I got my stop set right where I need it. So we're just going to run this through. So now, if you look at this here, you can see I got this here. It's a little long. Actually, it's a little long. We could actually cut a little more off. You can see, I don't know if you can see it. But if I put it right about there, it's actually a little long. So we can actually cut a little bit more off. So I can adjust my stop to, I don't know if you can see it. I can adjust my stop to cut a little more off this bottom piece right here. I'm just going to cut a little more off on this. And we'll see how we got it. I could probably go a little bit more yet. I'm a little long. You want to try to get it as close as possible because it'll just be less sanding in the future when we go to, after we glue this together. So I'm just going to cut a little more off. Take it out a little bit more. And then we'll try it again. And actually we're pretty good right there. We're pretty good. So once you get one slope cut and it's the size you want it right here, that's when you go and take your stop right here and adjust your stop so you can cut these over and over and over. You don't have to worry about measuring. And what we're going to do, I got my stop cut. We're going to take another one in. I have another piece of 1/4 inch Baltic birch. First thing we're going to do is cut a 45-degree angle on it. Now that you have your 45-degree angle cut on that, just flip it over like this here. Bring it up to your stop. Now you should be able to run that across and it'll be exactly the same size as your other one. Here's the two pieces that we cut. Exactly the same size. You can sit and cut these all day long. You don't have to measure. You got your stop set. You got your table saw set at 45. You can sit and cut these all day long. Have them all the same. And they should fit pretty nice on the slope on your car. Right like that. You want to get them as close as possible because then it'll be less sanding. So now we have the two slopes cut for this hopper. Now what we can actually do is go back to the workbench and start gluing this together. And one more thing I want to mention. Once you get your slope cut and you get it to the size you need and it works, keep one for a template. That way you can always use this to set up your stop. Put it in your Ziploc bag, keep it as a template because that'll work for every car that you make as long as you make the car. We're shooting for 8 inches. So long as you make the car with the same measurements, this slope will work. Alright guys, we are all ready to glue this together. One thing I just want to remind you, when you originally cut your pieces for your sides, make sure you got them exactly the same size. Make sure they fit and they're exactly the same size. Make sure you went down 5/8 on this side and 5/8 on this side so they all line up perfect. Same thing with your slope. Make sure they're all cut the same to fit your sides. When you first start out, you might have to creep up to the size and get it the way you need it. So we're going to start gluing this together. I'm just going to take a side right here, lay it down here. We're going to put glue on this side, put glue on this side, and we're just going to take this and set it up against there. One thing I like to do is keep this level right here as much as you can. Don't worry if it sticks out the bottom a little bit. We're going to sand that anyway. But try to keep it as level as possible on the top part right here. Alright, so we're just going to lay your side down. Make sure you got your angle correct. We're just going to put that up against there. Kind of feel, make sure you got that straight. Push it just a little bit. We're going to be doing some sanding on this, but try to get it as close as possible. Get that one on there. Now we're going to glue this one on there. Because of the odd shape of this whole hopper car, it's kind of hard to clamp this stuff. So you're just going to have to do the best you can in gluing this on here. Once this glue sets up, it's going to be pretty strong. So what we're going to do is let these two sides dry really nice, because you want these to be totally dried so you can work with it to get this other one glued on. The other one should sit right in there and glue right in there. But we're going to let this sit and dry. And like I said, don't worry about it sticking out the bottom right here a little bit. We're going to do some sanding. So we'll be back once this is dried. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue this other one on, because you can see this other one will fit right in there really nice. I'm going to glue that on, get it all glued, and then we'll be back, because then we got to go through the another process of putting these little end caps on that we mentioned about. So we'll let this dry and we'll be back. Alright guys, we are back. I got everything all glued together, got two sides on, slopes on. Now you can see that it's not really even on the ends right here. On the bottom you can see it's not really even. We're going to do some sanding there. In the sides we're going to sand all that. So we're going to clean this all up and get everything nice and square. And then we're going to, once we get, you got to sand all this stuff here before you can put these end pieces on. So we're going to go and sand all this up and get this looking pretty good on the sides and ends and everything on the bottom, and then we'll be back to glue these end pieces on. Alright, here at the belt sander, I'm just going to take and sand these sides up like this here, and then actually we're going to go over to the disc sander and take care of these two ends in the bottom right here. What we're looking for is to get that nice and smooth on the edge right here. Pretty good there. Alright, so we're going to go over to the another disc sander, and we're going to do this bottom. We're going to do these end pieces right here. The reason why you don't want to try to do this bottom on here is you want to try to keep this as square as possible, and if you rock anything like this here, it's not going to be square. So I have a way of doing this on a disc sander, on my other disc sander. So we'll go over there and finish these two sides up here. All right, here at the other disc sander right here, what I have here is a piece of wood with a 45-degree angle cut on. This is actually 45 degrees. And what we're going to do is run this down into this disc, and you can see it has to be sanded a little bit on the bottom right here. And that'll if you keep it up against this 45 degree angle right here, you'll be able to sand that nice and smooth on the bottom. And I plug my sander in here. Just 1 second here. All right, I had to plug my sander in. So we're gonna just plug this in. We're gonna just run this down here and sand that bottom. Okay, so I think we got that nice and flat on the bottom. So that'll sit nice on your car. And now we can just go and clean up these sides right here. And I'll take this clamp off of here. Take this piece out of here. We'll put our miter slide in there, and we're just going to square up these ends right here. So we got these ends nice and square, and now we can glue our other pieces on the ends. It'll have a nice and square end to go on, and we got the bottom nice and square. So let's head back over to the workbench, and then we'll get going on that. All right, guys. Everything's nice and square, like I said. You want to make sure that these ends are nice and square right here on both ends. They're nice and flat, and then also across the bottom, you want to make sure that this bottom, this bottom is nice and square all the way across. Because when you go to glue this on your base, you want that to sit nice and flat on your base. Now, as far as the end pieces, I just got some 1/8 inch Baltic birch here. It's cut a little bit more than 3 inches. It's a little wider than actual 3 inches. We're going to glue that on the end. Now you'll see, once you line up the top, you'll see that I did not cut an angle. Let me see. I did not cut a 45 degree angle on that end piece. What we're going to do is let it hang over like this, and then we're going to sand that to 45 degrees. We'll do that to both ends. Just like this one right here that I got done, I did not cut that 45 degree angle on that piece. I glued it on, and then I sanded it to 45. So we're just going to basically throw some glue on here and glue these pieces on here. And I usually glue them both on at the same time. What I'll do is I'll use a clamp to clamp these together. All right, so I'll set this piece on here. We'll put this piece on here on the end. Make sure it's level to the top. And I'm going to hold it just a little bit here, just so it stays. And then I'll just add a clamp to it. And the reason why you want them just a little longer, that way, because we're going to put this on a sander again, and we're going to sand that edge. So I'm just going to take a long clamp right here, and we're going to clamp this on here. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab me another clamp and put it across this side over here. All right, I'm just going to got another clamp right here. We're just going to put it across here. To clamp that on. And we'll let that sit for a while to get that all tight. Once that's all dried, we're going to take this back over to the belt sander and sand this side and sand this side. And then we'll sand them slopes right here to get that 45-degree angle on that piece. That way, and I do it that way because then you don't have to worry about trying to cut a 45 on that small little piece that goes on the end. So we'll let this dry and we'll come back and do some more sanding. All right, guys, we are back. We got these end pieces glued on. Now you can see they are not even with this slope. We got to sand that down so it's 45-degree angle. We're going to head over to the belt sander and just set that on the belt sander and sand that down to a 45. And then we'll come back and we'll be ready to, well, let's go to the sander and then we'll come back and talk about it some more. All right, here at the belt sander, first thing we're going to do is sand these sides again, because when you glued these here pieces on, they might have stuck over a little bit on the sides. We want to clean them up and get them nice and flat. Sides right here. Now we're going to sand this here off where we don't have that even with the slope to create that 45-degree angle right there. take and sand this top one more time to clean up any where it's overhanging a little bit on the top. Alright. We pretty much got everything all sanded. We got that sanded at 45 right there, that piece that we glued on. Looks pretty good. Now, we will probably end up hand sanding this all a little nicer, getting some of these sharp edges all off of here. But we're going to go back to the workbench and actually glue this on the base. Alright, back at the workbench here. Now, remember way back in the beginning of the video, I said we need to make this first before we do the base. So, because my goal was to have this be 8 inches long. And let's just see what we got here. We got exactly 8 inches long. I mean, it turned out perfect. This piece was here, 7 3/4. Then we added an eighth and an eighth. It turned out exactly 8 inches long. But you don't want to make your base until you get this done, because maybe for some reason you were off a little bit. Maybe it was 8 inches and an eighth or something like that, or maybe longer, or maybe just a little bit short. You don't want to make your base ahead of time and then it not being long enough or too long. So now, here is our base material that we're going to use to cut the base out of. What you can do is just lay this across here. This is actually wider than what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 3 inches. Well, let's just say your base material, you lay it across there. Now all you have to do is take your pencil and trace along here. Now you know your base is going to be that long. And if you go right there, it's 8 inches. But you want to make this first and then measure out for your base, because your base needs to be exactly the same length as the top. I already made a base. I got a base already made right here for it. This is 8-inch base. And another thing, remember I said when you make your base, leave your cover plate off. This is the cover plate that covers up that glue that you put in for that cord. Leave this cover plate off. And the reason for that is when you go to put your posts on, you want to be able to, what we're going to do is glue this on the base first. But then when you go to put these on, you want to be able to take this card and set it one more time on the sander down here, so you can sand any of this post that might come off through the bottom right here a little bit. I'll show you that later. But anyway, once you got this built and your base made, now you got your base made, leave your cover plate off. We're going to glue this on here. Now, and this is why it's important, because you need your, and I'll try to show you here, you need to have your base right up even with your top. Right up even with your top, right here. This base has to be even with the top. And if you go on the other side right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got to be even with the top, right there. That's important, because when you go to put these corner posts on, they need to be straight up and down. They need to go straight up and down and line up with the corners right here. When you go to put these corner posts on, and we're going to put 8 of these on, they need to be straight up and down. That's why your base needs to be exactly the length of your top of your hopper. So make your hopper first, and then measure out your base. And then once you got your base measured out, you can go ahead and do all your axle holes, your glue holes, add the cord, do all that stuff. Leave the cover plate off. Now the next step is we're going to glue this on this base. Because you want this on nice and tight, so when you go to put the post on, it's not all wiggling and moving around. So we're going to put some glue onto this. Once you got glue on that, we're gonna get our square ready because we want this to be exactly in place. We'll just kind of move here so I can show you. You want your hopper to be flush with the sides, and you also want it to be even with the ends of your car. Press it down just a little bit. We just need to make sure that's flush on both sides. You want that to be nice and flush. You might have to adjust it here and there a little bit. It should be real close. And then you want to make sure it's square up and down this way, so nothing's sticking out. And I think it's good right there. We're gonna let that sit right there because you want this piece glued on solid tight before you start messing around with all these corner posts. We have a bunch of these corner posts that we have to put on, but you want this piece to be nice and tight on there before you start messing with that. So we're going to let that sit and dry, and then we'll be back to put these corner posts on. Alright guys, we are back. I got the hopper glued onto the base. It's nice and solid. It ain't going nowhere. What is important, you want to make sure that when you glue it, everything is nice and even right here. Everything's nice and even on the sides, and both ends are lined up with the bottom. That is important, because the next step that we're going to do is we're going to put on these corner posts. And these corner posts will go on like this. I like putting the end ones on first, and then I'll turn it on the side and I'll put these other ones on. Now you'll see that this corner post, it's longer than what it really needs to be right here, but that's okay. We can trim them off. It's better to have it too long than too short. And you want to make sure, get the light, you want to make sure that you get these lined up with the edge the best you can when you go to glue it on. We can always take this on the sander and sand this edge one more time. But you got to remember, once this is on, I'll put the ends on first, and then I'm going to come back and we'll put the side pieces on. And the side pieces will go right like that. And it'll fit on there really nice right there. Then you'll have a corner piece. It don't matter if it sticks below this bottom part a little bit. That's okay, because like I said, we're going to sand this bottom. We'll set this on the sander and sand this again. So the first thing we're going to do is just put the end ones on. And what we can do is just now, you know what, and I just happen to remember too, there's only glue on this part and this part up here. Don't put glue on this whole thing. I almost did it, so we're just going to put some glue, a little bit of glue right here and a little bit down here. It don't take much to hold this stuff on. And if you have to, you can always put a little weight on these if you want. I don't think we'll have to. But always make sure the next one is going to fit on there pretty good. You can see it's going to go on there pretty nice. Might want to hold it a little bit. Now, I forgot to mention, these are 1/8 inch Baltic birch. They're 3/8 inches wide. And you'll have to come up with the length when you glue this on, when you glue this hopper onto the base. Just measure up how high you need it and go a little longer. I cut these on my bandsaw. It's real easy to cut this on the bandsaw. These are kind of small. I'd be cutting on the table saw, but the bandsaw works really nice for cutting these pieces. And I just basically hold this a little bit so it stays, and then we'll go on to the next one. The next one on this side right here. And always make sure that the next one's going to fit on there pretty nice. Just put it up against it, kind of see how it's going to match up with it. So that's pretty good. Might have to hold it down just a little bit. But once this glue is dried, these ain't going nowhere. And don't worry about it sticking above the top right here. We're gonna cut them off and sand the top one more time. So then we're on there pretty good. And once them are on there, you can actually take it and turn it like this. Now you can get the other two on. Stick this one on here. Like I said, we're going to take this on the sander again and sand this side and sand this side again to get this nice and squared up. But you can always double check with another piece right here. And then we can do the same thing to this side over here. Alright, so we got the end ones on. The only ones we got to put on next are the sides. We'll let this dry a little bit so I can work with it, and then when I come back we'll put the ones on the side. Alright guys, we got the end posts glued on. They look pretty good. Don't worry if they stick out a little bit past the top. We can sand them later. I was going to go over to the belt sander and sand this side to make sure that when I go to put these on, everything lines up good on the corner. But it looks like it actually does, so we don't need to do no sanding there. We're just going to glue these other posts on. There's 4 of them. And basically, you're just going to throw some glue on here. And just lay these. Actually, we're going to put a little glue on this other post too. Just put a little glue on this other post because that needs to be glued right there too. And then we're just going to lay this on here. Try to get it even with the edge. Wipe off any squeeze out. And don't worry if it sticks out the bottom a little bit, we can sand that. We'll put the other one on. Make sure the edges are lined up. You better put some glue on this here on the post. Put a little bit on the post. Make sure the sides are lined up. The edge. You can always do a little sanding. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these weights. I'm going to weigh these down. Oop. We'll weigh these down and it should be set. So what I'm going to do is we'll let them dry a little bit. I'm going to finish gluing on the other posts on the other side, and then we'll come back and where it overhangs on the bottom right here, that's what I'm talking about, where we're going to take this car, set it on the sander, and sand this bottom up and make sure these are nice and even on the bottom. And then we're going to also cut these off on the top up here and sand that top a little bit so it's flush on the top, because you're going to want your roof, once you put the roof on, you're going to want that to sit nice and flat on top of your hopper. So we'll let these dry. I'll come back and I'll have all these glued on. Alright guys, as you can see, I decided not to go with these blocks. They weren't very heavy. Not heavy as what I wanted them to be. And I wanted to glue all 4 of these on at once, so I just went with a bunch of these clamps here. Works pretty nice. So we'll take these clamps off here. Everything should be pretty well glued on good. And plus I also wanted to glue where the 2 pieces meet up on the edge. So that's what I did. I just wanted things to be nice and tight. Because the next step we're going to do, and you can see the corners are pretty well nice and flush with the edges right here. You can always do a little sanding on here if you want. I will be sanding a lot of this after we get done. But what we got to do now is go over to the bandsaw, and I'm going to cut off some of these pieces that are sticking over the top. You want them cut off as close as possible to the top of this. We're going to take this, and once we get these cut off pretty close, we're going to take it on the belt sander and sand it. And then also on the bottom right here, we'll cut some of these off, and then we'll go on the sander and sand them nice and flush. So we'll head over to the bandsaw, and I'll just kind of show you me cutting this off here, and then we'll sand everything. All right, here at the bandsaw, what I'm going to do is just kind of freehand this. I'm just going to cut off a little bit where it's hanging over, and then we can sand the rest of it flush. Kind of get it the closest you can. You can always sand more. You just don't want to sand into your car, cut into your car. We'll go on the bottom right here and cut one or two of these off. That way you're not sanding off more than what you have to. Pretty much got it pretty close. Now we'll just go over to the belt sander, and we'll touch this on the top and touch this on the bottom, and we'll get that nice and flush, because you need these flush to the top of your car so you can put your roof on. Alright, belt sander. We're just gonna start out with the bottom right here, and this is why I said don't put the cover plate on, because it would be in the way of trying to sand these flush. So we'll just set this on here and do a little sanding. We're going to do the same thing with the top right here. Now you don't want to take too much off, because you don't want to change the height of your car too much. Just try and get that nice and flat, because when you go to put your roof on, you're just trying to get that nice and flat, so when you go to put your roof on, everything sits on there really nice. And I think we pretty much got it pretty good here. So we'll head back over to the workbench. Alright guys, we are on the home stretch here as far as getting this hopper car done. What I did was, on the last part I cut these what was hanging over on the top. Got this nice and smooth, because you want this top nice and smooth, because you want your roof to sit on there nice and flat. So the next thing we're going to be making is a roof. The roof is made out of 1/2 inch material. And how I determine the width and the length of my roof is for the width, I measure across from the furthest part of the edge of the post to this edge right here, the furthest part, and then I usually add about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want your roof hanging over too much. You want it just a little bit hanging over, but you want to cover up these corner pieces right here. So basically, if I measure this one here from post to post, it's like 3 1/4 inches. So I'm going to go about 3 3/8 inches. So that's what I got right here, is 3 3/8 inch piece. And I do the same thing for the length. I'll measure from this post to this post, and I'll add about 1/8 of an inch, and then I'll cut my board to that size, and that way it'll cover up the actual top of the post when you put it on. So I got a piece of 1/2 inch board here, cut to that length and that width that I need. Now, it's going to be, I'm not going to have any pattern for this at the end of this video as far as a PDF file, because a lot of these parts are cut and sanded to the size they need to be. It just depends on your measurement and the size of the car you want. So I'm not really going to have any certain measurements it's got to be. You can decide what you want for a hangover on each side, and on each end you can decide all that depending on how your car turned out as far as when you got this all done. So the next thing we're going to do is make this roof. So I got my piece right here. We're going to go over to the table saw, and I'm going to show you how I made this roof, because on a hopper car you usually have a walkway on the top. It's a flat walkway on the top on a hopper car. So I'm going to show you how to create that. So let's head over to the table saw, and we'll start working on that. All right, here at the table saw. Now, you've probably seen me when I made the roof for the box car. I used a little jig like this here. This actually fits right over the top of my fence, but if you tip it upside down, I can use it to hold my piece of wood to run it across to get that angle on my roof. So what I did to start out with, I do have a setup block here that I can just put on here and move my fence over, set my blade, and it'll all work fine. But you're not going to have a setup block to start out with. So what I usually do is I take my block of wood right here, and I'll clamp it to my piece right here. Now, like I said, you want a flat area on the top of your roof. So you're going to create some sort of pitch on your roof. I don't know if you can see it, but you take this and you want to create some sort of pitch. So you're going to cut this a little bit off on an angle. So you kind of decide what you want. You don't want to come right down to the bottom part of your roof. You don't want to come down to a point. You want to leave a little bit on the bottom. So what I did was I clamped my board to the piece right here. I'd clamp it to the piece. I'd use 2 clamps. I'd clamp it to the piece right here, and what I would do is move my fence a little bit by little bit. I would set my blade at a little bit of an angle, and then I'd move my fence up here, and I'd run this through a little bit, and then if it wasn't enough, I'd run it through. I'd move my fence a little bit more, and I'd run it again until I cut off exactly what I wanted on my roof, where I got it to the pitch that I want. Now, I did that, and what I came up with on my piece that I made for my template block, because you can see right here, I got a pitch on this roof right here, and I like to leave a little bit on the bottom of the roof. So this is the pitch that I came up with. So, and that was from running this back and forth until I got that blade set at an angle that I liked. Now, the angle that I have this blade right now is 8.5 degrees, and I use one of these digital. I use one of these digital readers right here, and I just stick it on my blade, and that'll tell me the degree that I got, and then I can always set it back to that. So I just kept on running it back and forth until I had the pitch, and then I kept on raising my blade up to where I kind of wanted it, how high I wanted it, because you want to leave a flat area on top. And this is what I came up with. If I take this temporary, and then once I came up with that pitch and I liked it, and then I flipped the board around and I cut me a roof, and I finished one roof. Once you finish one roof, save that as your setup block, because I got a setup block right here. Now, anytime I want to make a roof, I just got to take this block, and I'm just going to take this block right here, and I can move my fence. I already got my blade set at 8.5 degrees, but if I didn't, I would just keep on moving my fence and set my blade until I would have it at the degree that I want it. And you can see I got it right there, and I would set my fence. Now, every time that I want to make a roof, I can just put this block in there, set my fence and my blade exactly where I want it. And it'll cut right through, and then all I got to do is flip this, and it'll cut another. I didn't do it on this one, I just did it on one side, but if I clamp this right here, it would create another pitch on that side of the blade, on that side of the roof, and I would have a perfect roof. So all I got to do is set this to where I want it, and I got my blade set at the height that I want, because on my roof I made it to where the blade did a little undercut right here, so that created, it looked like a roof, a walkway across the center of my roof. Now, if you didn't want to do that, you could just cut both sides and make it so there's a little bit of a flat area across the top. Then you could actually take a piece of Baltic birch and glue it to the top of your roof and create a walkway if you wanted to do it that way. I just happened to get lucky and came up with the idea of just doing that little bit of an undercut right here, and it works out just fine. So if I take this and set it up here, it's going to come through and it's going to cut perfect every time. So now you got your setup block, and it might take you a couple times to do this. You might have to trial and error, do a few things, you know, and create that one roof. Once you get the one roof completed and you like it, save that for a setup block. So now I take my 1/2 inch piece of wood here, and I already got it figured out, the width and the length. I'm going to take this and I'm going to attach it to this piece right here. I'm going to clamp it, because you want to clamp it, you don't want to have to try to hold this. And I'm going to clamp it to that, and now when I run that through, it's going to cut that exact pitch on this roof. So let's do that. We'll run that through, and I like using this little jig that I got here, because you can clamp it to that, just run it right up against your fence. Okay, so once you run it through one time, and you'll see what I mean. I have the pitch I want, and I have that little lip right there where it's creating that walkway across the top. So now all I got to do, tip it upside down, reclamp it on there, and you want to clamp it. You don't want to try to hold this. Now I got it clamped on there. We're going to run it through one more time. And now, because I use my setup block to set everything up just the way I need it, I don't have to worry about doing any measuring and figuring out the height of the blade or the angle. I just use my setup block to set this all up the way I need it. Now, I can just make all the roofs I want. There is the roof. There is the little walkway across the top. And I can sit and cut these all day long. And I don't have to really do any type of measuring. But it's going to take you a little bit of practice and figuring out to get one roof made. Once you get one roof made, save that as a template. Like this one here, I got it painted blue. And now I can just grab that, no matter where my fence is, if my blade is straight, I can just put this in there, get it set right, the height, I can get it set right. And it's going to create that roof every time. So let's head back over to the workbench and we'll talk a little bit more about this roof. Alright, back here at the bench. So now that you got your roof cut, now it's just there's a couple different ways you can do this roof to put it on here. You could take this roof and you could glue it right to the hopper, right on there. Glue it solid. The child would not be able to get in there. It'd be like the box car that I made. The roof is glued on. You can't get inside. There's no opening for a door on the box car I made. Everything is just, glued together. You wouldn't be able to get in here to do anything. But it would still look nice. You could just sit and glue this right on there. Or there's another way to do this roof. You could go like this here and put some pieces of wood on the back, and you can make it a removable roof. So now it's just going to slide around just a little bit. It's not going to come off if they pull the car around, and it'll just come on and off. The child can fill this with some stuff if they want to play that way. Set the roof back on it, it'll look nice. So there's two different ways you can do this roof. I kind of like this way. That way that gives them a little bit more, they can fill this up with something, and they can have a little bit more imagination going on there playing with this. Or, like I said, you could just glue it on and just call it a roof. That is the two different ways I'm going to be doing these cars. So I'm going to, I think what I'm going to do is talk a little bit more on the next segment. We're going to finish up this video. I want to talk a little bit more about some highlights of all this video. Some parts of the video that I need you to really concentrate on, and some different steps that you need to really concentrate on. So on the next segment, we're going to talk about that. All right, guys, I think we're pretty much done with this hopper car. Now, what I did off camera, I did glue the wheels on. I've done that a million times throughout these videos, so you probably know how to do that. And I also put this pig in the back here. That's self-explanatory doing that. So it's pretty much done. Got the roof on right here. I want to just go over a few things before I end this video, because I think it's important to talk about a couple the different steps I'm making this car. The first thing I want to mention is I'm not going to have a PDF form with all the pattern on and all the different sizes of all the parts, because a lot of this is made by whatever you come up with the size here, and then a lot of the other parts are cut and then they're sanded to fit. So I don't want to tell you to cut the slope 5 inches and it not fit. So you're going to have to watch the video and watch what measurements I use on these different pieces. Now we'll start out by talking about the sides. That's the first thing that you really have to make. Let me get them out of here. Okay, these side pieces right here. Now, I showed you how to start out by cutting these side pieces. I said you got to go 5/8. This has got to be 7 3/4 inches long right here. You go 5/8 down, make a 45-degree cut. Then you go over here, go 5/8 down, and make a 45-degree cut. And then by the time you add on your 1/8 and 1/8, you're going to have your 8-inch car. My goal is to have an 8-inch car. If you wanted an 8.5-inch car, you're going to have to change these measurements. So I'm not going to really send along a PDF for this. You're going to have to watch the video. But one of the main things is once you get your sides cut and you got them the size you want, you're going to need 2 of them. And once you get 2 of them cut, you want to make sure that these 2 sides are exactly the same shape. You want to put them together, make sure they're the same shape all the way around, exact, because that's going to make a big difference on the rest of your assembly on this car. So make sure if you go 5/8 of an inch down on this side, you go 5/8 of an inch down on this side. Make sure these fit together perfect. Once you got 2 that are perfectly fit, now you can go on to your slopes. Now, your slopes, determine the length of your slopes is determined by the measurement from here to here. What I like to do is make sure that this one actually is kind of, well, let me see once. Right here. You want to make sure that you cut your slopes as close as possible to what you need them. Now, if you can look here, this one's over the bottom just a little bit. Maybe I can take a little off of that. You want it as close as possible, because what you don't want to sand no more than you have to. We sanded this here edge and we sanded the bottom. So you want to cut your slope to match the length of your 45 right here. And this one's real close. I could probably get away with this one, but you want to get it as close as possible on both sides. Once you got that, then you can start gluing your slopes on like I showed you. And the next step was gluing the slopes on the sides of this. Once you got the slopes glued on the sides, and you got the other piece on top, and you actually got everything made, now you need to take it over to the sander, and you need to sand this edge of it and this edge of it and the bottom. You want this bottom nice and straight, because the only way you can be able to put on these end pieces that go on the end of the car right here, you need to have the side of your hopper nice and straight to put these end pieces on. These end pieces are 1/8 inch, is what I use on mine. So once you get your slopes put on, you sand the front and back, and you sand this piece right here. And I showed you how I did it on a disc sander. You might come up with a better way of doing it, but you just want to make sure that when you get all this sanded and you end up putting your pieces on, everything is square. You want to make sure that it is square across the top. You want to make sure it's all square all the way around it, and you want to make sure this bottom is all square, because that's going to make a difference on how this all sits on your wheelbase. You want everything to sit nice, because when you put it on your wheelbase, let's say this is your wheelbase, you want to make sure that the measurement And here's something to it. You got to remember the measurement from the bottom of your hopper, right here at the bottom. I usually go like this with my square. I'll go like this. The measurement to the bottom of your hopper, make sure that's the same all the way across. So if I go down like this here, and I take this here, make sure that it is sitting on the base, make sure that it's the same all the way across. You want to make sure that's the same height all the way across. That is going to make a big difference on how this all goes together. I don't know if you can see it, but make sure it's the same height all the way across. That way, when you go to put this on your base, everything is exactly square. Once you get this all sanded smooth and you put your end pieces on, you sand that 45 on there, you should be ready to set this on your base. Now, remember I said you need to have your base right here even with the side of your hopper. That's another thing you need to do. Make sure that your base is the same length as the top of your hopper. That's very important right there, because when you go to your next step, after you sand all, you need to put on these posts, and these corner posts have to be straight up and down. They have to match up from corner to corner. So you got to go like this. You got to make sure they're straight up and down, and that'll happen if you got everything the same length. They'll be straight up and down. And you can see right here, everything looks pretty nice, straight up and down. Once you got that, you're pretty much ready to do your roof. That's why I say you make this hopper first, and then once you got this made, all sanded, all put together the way you want it, lay it upside down on your wheelbase material, draw your line. Now you can get your exact length of your wheelbase. So now you're ready to actually do your roof. Now, like I said before, there's a couple different ways you can do your roof. You can do one that just glues on, or you can do one like this here that sits on and it can take off. When you cut your roof, once you get a roof made that you like with the right degree on it, I think mine was 8.5 degrees. Once you get the right degree on it, you get one made that you like, keep it for a template like I did. I have a template right here. Now when I go to set up my table saw to cut roofs, I can cut these roofs all day long. I don't have to do any measuring. I just got to set my blade up, the height, the angle, and everything's done. So that's pretty much the important steps of making this car. The base pretty much is all the same. You make it the same as any other car with the wheels and the cord and the peg. You just got to make sure the base is the same length as the top of the hopper. What I have here is a bag with all my different parts in. Got all the measurements that I need. This would be for an 8-inch hopper. Here I got my wheelbase, 8-inch. So when I want to make some more of these cars, all I got to do is grab this bag right here, and it'll tell me everything I need to do. It's got my templates in it, my setup blocks, everything's in here that I need. Real important. So that's pretty much it. The car actually looks pretty nice. I think I'll make a lot more of these cars with the roof that actually comes off, because I like that idea when it comes off. And another thing, don't forget to put your cover plate on to cover that hole where the glue was when you put your cord in. That's the last thing you got to do. Put that cover plate on. But it's pretty much all done. Make sure your wheels turn, and you should be good to go. If you got any questions, just send me an email, give me a call, or get a hold of me on Facebook, YouTube. I'll be more than happy to help you with any questions with it. It's a really easy car to make. I know the video is kind of long, but I talked a lot. I tried to explain everything possible on making this car. So it really don't take long to make this car. I can make one of these cars under an hour, probably. Way under an hour, easy. That's not counting the time it takes for the glue to dry, but I mean, I could cut these cars in no time. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to sign in on them notifications so you can get more of my videos. I got a lot more videos coming. I think we got 2 more cars for the freight train to do, and then we have 2 other bonus cars that I said we're going to do. So far, the train is coming along pretty good. Hopefully, everybody that has watched these videos on making all these cars, hopefully there's somebody that has made all these cars. Maybe you can show me some pictures or send me some pictures. I'd like to see them. But, yeah, I really like this train. So give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next video.